Hey everyone, I have for you today something that I think is big, and you should too. Um, I'm going to be telling you today about the Law of One. The Law of One is a concept that comes from some research done in the 80s. Um, there was a group of researchers who wanted to do some experiments on the idea of channeling, like mediums who channel spirits, for example. Um, Channeling. So, this group of researchers, who were a guy named Don Elkins and a woman named Carla Ruckert and another man named Jim McCarty, they put together a group called L&L Research, and uh, Don and Carla had been working for a number of years before Jim joined them. And then they started having some real success sometime after Jim joined the group. And the uh, Don explains that the purpose of their experiment were to simply gather research and scientific data. Um, and they took all of their findings and they published them in a 5-book series called The Ra Material. Ra as in R-A, Ra, spelled like the Egyptian god Ra. And might have been a play on words, uh, not sure, but anyway, so um, in these experiments, they allegedly spoke with an entity through Carla. Don was asking questions, and this entity claimed to be the Egyptian god Ra. Now, what exactly that means, we'll get to in a minute. Anyway, so Ra says, um, and I quote, "We call ourselves the Confederation of Planets in the service of the infinite Creator. This is a simplification in order to ease the difficulty of understanding among your people." So Ra alludes to the fact that they live in a higher dimension and that they have come to share a message with this group of researchers, so that these researchers can in turn give this message to the world. So Ra is not necessarily a person or a ghost or even a singular entity. So, well, it is a singular entity. So basically, Ra is what they call a soul group, which basically means that Ra says that there was a group of people who lived 2 billion years ago on Venus, and they were a very peaceful people, and they um, increased in consciousness and love and and harmony, and they slowly raised their frequency as a people and became like one mind and one heart, in so much that they basically became essentially a unified consciousness, um, which is a very strange concept for people like us who very much value our individuality. I don't quite understand exactly how it works. Maybe somebody else does, but I'm not sure that all the information is there. I'm not sure if it is that they are individual consciousnesses that uh, think so much alike that they communicate as one, or if they have merged into one consciousness. I'm just not sure. But you get the idea. They are a soul group, and Ra talks about how there are many soul groups, and there are good soul groups and bad soul groups. Though good and bad is a relative thing and not exactly real in Ra's explanation of it, which is something that if you read the Law of One, you could get into, but I'm not really going to talk about that here. Anyway, so Ra talks about many subjects throughout the series, which the series some people refer to simply as the Law of One, even though that is not really the name of the series that Don published. He published it under the name The Raw Material, but some people just refer to it altogether as the Law of One. But the Law of One is actually the concept that the Raw Material refers to, explains, and what that is I'll get to in a minute. But Ra explains in this book many things about, chakras and energy rays and historical events and figures. He explains, like some of the story behind Adolf Hitler and what happened to his soul after he died, and who Tesla was, and just a lot of things like this. Also talks about aliens and how they're involved with our planet, and kind of the lore that goes around, all the lore behind aliens, what's true, what isn't true, why they do certain things, expounds on a lot. And there are many scientific claims made by Ra in this material. This was back in the 80s, of course, and a lot of the claims that Ra made weren't discovered yet, but have since been discovered by the scientific community, which is very interesting. Also, the pyramid, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Ra explains how that was made, and this is where the Egyptian god Ra ties into it, because supposedly, allegedly what happened was Ra, the soul group, came to the earth, to Egypt, where they saw that people were, very spiritual, and they felt like people were ready to hear this message, that is the Law of One. So they built this pyramid, which actually has is the structure that it is for a reason, and because of that structure is able to to fulfill certain functions, and it's almost like a machine in a way. And turns out that people weren't quite ready for the message. We weren't evolved yet enough as a species, and so people kind of distorted the message, and Ra had to leave, feeling that they had failed their mission, which, according to Ra, is the reason they came back to talk to Dawn and Carla and Jim to give the message again, now that it has been many thousands of years later. Ra says that the pyramid was built. Ra says that they created the pyramid with their mind, and they did this in about 11,000 years ago. Now that it's been so long since then, Ra says that they think we're ready now for this message again, and that we need to get ready for the solar event, which is coming. So, hold on, I'm just looking at my notes here. So Oh yeah, Ra said that there was a South American group, the Confederation that Ra's from, also sent a group, presumably a soul group like Ra, to South America um, at another time, and that did not go well either. But supposedly there is another large pyramid in South America, perhaps many. Well, we know there are many, many pyramids under the ground in South America, which is pretty cool. But I think Ross says that there was a big pyramid like the Pyramid of Giza, also built in South America in the same manner. And the people did not accept it there either, the message. So anyway, the message, what is the message? The message is about the law of one. The law of one is a concept that it's a big concept. It's a little complex and yet simple at the same time. To start off with what this concept is, I'm going to read you a quote by Ra. You are everything, every being, every emotion, every event, every situation. You are unity. You are infinity. You are love light, light love. You are. This is the law of one. Ra talks about how everything that exists comes from one source, which many people call, aptly, source. And Ra calls this the one infinite creator. So basically, there is consciousness. There always has been consciousness. There always will be consciousness. And this is all that there is, was, and ever will be. Consciousness is the only thing that exists. It is infinite. It is an infinite field of consciousness. So, infinity is a little bit misunderstood, I think, in our culture. We think of it as being bigger than big can possibly be, but that's not what infinity is. Infinity has no qualities, has no limitations. So it is both infinitely big and infinitely small at the same time. It is not here or there. It does not exist in a place. It does not even exist in a time. Infinity has no qualifications. So it is everything and nothing all at once. If it had any qualities, it would cease to be infinite. So it's not floating in a black void somewhere, because there is no black void. Because the only thing that exists is consciousness. The black void that you might imagine, space being one black void, is a figment of the imagination of infinite consciousness. Nothing exists but this consciousness, including time and space. They are made up elements of the imagination of the one infinite consciousness. So, in order to avoid endless boredom and a lack of purpose, the one infinite creator split itself off into infinite pieces. And those pieces are us. We are bits of consciousness of the one infinite creator. But really, we are the one infinite creator, because there is only one infinite consciousness. So the infinite creator has essentially tricked itself through us into experiencing multiple points of view and uh, infinite different experiences, so that it could experience itself. So all of reality is the one infinite creator experiencing itself, experiencing in infinite variety, which is only itself. So reality is a dream. Everything that you think is the one infinite creator thinking that thing. And you are imagining that it is just you thinking it. In reality, you and everyone else, your parents, your friends, your spouse, your siblings, uh, people you don't know, CEOs, celebrities, homeless people, animals, insects, plants, and everything else is all one. You are all of them, and they are you. And and everything that you see and experience is a dream. You're imagining it. None of it is actually happening, which I realize sounds insane. But the more you look into it, the more sense it makes. Um, you imagine um, your body and everything around you so that you can experience and have a genuine experience for the purpose of learning and growing. But really, all you are is consciousness. You're just imagining that you have a body and are surrounded by a physical reality so that you can experience. Um, and there are infinite realities. There's this physical reality, there are infinite physical realities, and there are also infinite non-physical realities, which are a hard thing to grasp when you live in a physical reality. And according to certain entities, such as Seth, who was channeled in the 60s, I believe, some entities who live in non-physical realities have a hard time believing in physical realities and understanding physical realities. Anyway, so there are two things that make up all of creation, and those are love and light. Light is basically the makeup of everything, and love is what sort of organizes that into everything we know. So love gives form and movement to the so-called light. These terms light and love are what Ra uses because we don't have better terms in our language for these things. They're the closest terms that Ra could come up with to use. But Ra calls love the primal co-creator and the great activator, because it takes consciousness and turns it into actual consciousness, conscious thought, directional, sensical thought, sensible, nonsense. So, Ra talks about densities, how there are, in each reality, there are octaves, and these octaves are made up of densities. So, our current octave has 7 densities, and each density has 7 subdensities. And each of those has 7 sub-subdensities, and so on infinitely. So humans, according to Ra, are currently in the 3rd density, about to move into the 4th density. And animals are 2nd density. 3rd density, Ra calls the choosing, where it's short and very intense, and you have to decide whether you're going to serve yourself or serve others. And this is the fork in the road that will stay with you through 4th, 5th, and 6th density until 7th density, when you have to come back to the path of service to others. For whatever reason, I'm not quite sure. This is the natural way of the universe, and we have all these experiences in third density. This is why life is so hard to force people to make decisions that are, hard and uncomfortable. But it forces a person to choose if they're going to serve themselves or serve others. And at the end of, there are these cycles, and the Earth goes through, or each planet goes through 3 of these cycles. They're 25,000 years long, and the Earth is currently ending its last or third 25,000 year cycle. And Ra came 11,000 years ago to give us this message to prepare us for the ending of this cycle, which Ra calls the Great Harvest, or the Harvest of Souls, or something like that, which might sound scary, but it's a wonderful thing where humankind raises their consciousness, vibration, whatever you want to call it, and we go into fourth density, which is, according to Ra, 100 times more harmonious than current life in third density, and essentially, heaven. And there's a solar flash that happens at the end of these cycles. The sun is going to have this mass coronal ejection, like a solar flare, but it'll be the entire outside of the sun, and it's going to be devastating for beings who cannot handle it because their vibration is too low, which is why Ra talks about raising your vibration. A lot of extraterrestrial groups have talked in recent years to all kinds of people about you need to raise your vibration through service and love, which is an interesting concept. So that's basically that. Ra talks about the first distortion in the Law of One, which is free will. So according to Ra, basically the highest law in the universe is free will. And you'll find, the more you study ufology, that all these different extraterrestrial groups want to help us, but they can only help us so far as we allow them to. We have to give them our consent in some way, various ways, because the law of free will is so important all throughout the universe. It's a huge deal, I guess. And so you'll hear people talk about how, well, the Satanists who run the world, they have to get permission. They have to get our consent in some way, and they do this in these manipulative ways, but they have to get our consent before they do things. Whether or not this is true, I can't say, but if so, this is the reason. The law of free will is so important. Even the negative entities obey it. So that's pretty interesting. And also, Christ came for the same reason as Ra, to prepare the earth for this ascension. 2,000 years later, he came to this. It was at a very dark time in the world's history. The Roman Empire was a large, powerful, and dark force, and Christ came with this message of, love and all these things, trying to get people to start. He's trying to steer humanity back on the right course to get us ready for this harvest that we're about to go through, which will essentially, it's already started really, but essentially it'll really commence with the solar flash, which is something I will do a video on later, because it's one of my favorite topics and extremely important, I feel. So, um, probably the most important thing that'll happen in any of our lives, and most people don't even know it's coming. So it's just, I don't know, it's kind of funny. So yeah, that is essentially the law of one. There is you can find it online for free. Just go to lawofone.info. Just type that into the URL bar, and you can read it for free that way, or you can buy the books. I'm sure those are good. I haven't read those. There's some slight differences between the online free version and the books. I don't know exactly what those are. From what I hear, though, some stuff is taken out in the books, but all of it was put into the free online version. So I would use that if I was you. So it's easier to like search for terms and things like that. Anyway, Aaron Abke, Aaron space Abke. He is someone that you should probably follow. He is something of an expert on the law of one, and he has videos on a lot of spiritual subjects revolving around spirituality. But um, one series of his is on the law of one. I would definitely check that out. I will put a link in the description to the first of that series, and you can find the rest from there. And I might touch more on this later. I will refer to the law of one often. So I highly, highly recommend everyone read it. I think it's a must read for everyone moving into the ascension. I think it's probably the most important channeled message for humanity. But anyway, I think everyone should read that and learn about it, get familiar with the terms. There's some interesting terms Ra uses in there, and do your homework. And I will see you later.